Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And there is an article today that talks about Britain's housing crisis, particularly in the rented sector, where owing to a mixture of the increased number of people and the number of landlords leaving the market because of sort of government policies continually favouring the tenant, is becoming so hard for prospective landlords to maintain any kind of control on their properties that many properties that were previously available for rent are being sold into private ownership, and the rent market, the amount of available rental properties is falling rapidly. This is leading to a massive shortage, and when you have a shortage of a product, the prices go up. And this is seen because now there is desperation amongst renters who cannot get a property. They're just simply not available, because anyone who can afford a higher price will willingly pay the higher price just to secure a home, leaving those at the bottom unable to fend for themselves. So we're going to take a look at this article here in the Mail, and then I'm going to discuss why this is the case today. Here's the article. So from the headline you can see it. Prospective tenants are sending landlords smiley photos or sob stories about their pets in a bid to secure a home, as competition for rental properties sparks ferocious bidding wars. Rents rocketed by up to 14% in the last year as people flood back to the cities. Property landlords now have their pick of tenants, meaning competition is fierce. People are sending CVs with smiley photos or pet sub stories to secure homes. And this is because constantly favouring tenants drives landlords out of the market. When you say, oh, well, you can't get rid of a tenant for this, and you can't get rid of a tenant for that, and a tenant's got a right for this. And they're looking now that there's a thing called Section 21, where a landlord who owns the property can't ask a tenant to leave. Because, I mean, let's say the landlord wants to sell the property to retire, but he can't just do that because the tenant has a right to stay there. But the landlord bought that property as part of his pension scheme, and he needs to sell up because he wants to move or whatever. Oh no, you can't do that because we've given the tenant too many rights. So Section 21 is going, and you've got to give them a reason. It's it's not their property; it's the landlord's property. Right of private property is that you may do what you want with it. Okay, you say you have to wait until the end of the fixed tenancy. Well, the plans now are to get rid of fixed tenancies, and basically you put a tenant in, and he's got a right to stay there forever. What if they stop paying their rent? It can take 6 months to a year. So you get a tenant comes in, pays a deposit, pays 1 month in rent in advance, and then he's got a place to live for a year for nothing. It's gone too far the tenant's way. The landlords are pulling out, and there's no rental properties. Now you say, well, all people shouldn't be renting, but of course there's many reasons people rent. Their credit is bad, for example, or they don't meet the requirements of a mortgage from a mortgage company, or they move a lot with their job and they don't want to invest in a property in a single place when they know they're going to be moving in a year's time or something. There's lots of reasons why people rent. But if the properties aren't there to rent, then the simple laws of supply and demand mean the rents go up. And who does that help? I mean, all these policies that the government have designed to help the tenants are actually making it far, far worse for the tenants, because ultimately the tenants are now starting to be priced out of the market. Anyway, we'll get on with this article. Boris Johnson last week, and this is madness in itself, Boris Johnson last week announced that low-paid workers will be able to use income from benefits to buy a council house, but critics say he needs to do more to help young professionals. Yeah, and also, why are we using public money to buy houses for people? If someone wants a house, they pay for it. I had to buy my house. I didn't get any help from the government. With 3 prospective tenants for each available property, people are seeking to stand out from the crowd in a ferocious bidding wars. Some are accompanying their CVs to landlords with pictures of them enjoying wholesome hobbies. For some landlords, it's not always about the money, it's about the calibre of the tenant, said Richard Davis, head of lettings at London-based estate agent Chesterton's. and tenants are doing all they can to try and secure a property. You typically get CVs showing a happy family or a couple with an adorable cat, as if to say, please take us, please feel sorry for us. Mr. Davies said about 10% now send a smiley and happy photo CV, adding that it was popular to mention the love of cooking or baking. Some landlords are putting off renting to people with pets, so those with them emphasise an emotional backstory of their beloved animal. If you say you've got a rescue mongrel, you might pull on the heartstrings of some landlords, as opposed to a designer dog that you pay £3,000 for. But James Hathaway, director of Winkworth Estate Agents in Reading, and said every landlord has a choice of tenants, so unfortunately they can be picky. People often send CVs with pictures of their dog, their life story, comments from previous landlords, but for most landlords it still doesn't wash, as they've got 2 other customers without animals. The national average rent outside of London is £1,088 a month, up from £982 last year. In the capital, it's £2,193 a month, a year-on rise of 14%. How can people afford it? It's unbelievable. Well, it's because the government have made it so. They've pushed toward the tenant and so created a housing vacuum. But it's not just the government, and we'll look at that in a moment. Letting company Uncle, which manages serviced rental apartments in London, has 1,982 tenants on its wait list. Tom Bill, head of research at estate agency Knight Frank, said the shortage of rental properties has been created in part by the holiday on stamp duty encouraging landlords to sell. Well, of course it did, and every landlord did. Industry insiders believe the dire lettings market should be a priority for Boris Johnson. And here's an example. My partner and I both earned £50,000 in new graduate jobs, but the landlord said there were people with better salaries and sturdier jobs than us, and so they didn't get the place. And that's what's happening. You could have a household income of £100,000 a year. Don't know why you're not buying a house. Oh yeah, that's right, London. You're probably talking 500,000 for a little 2 up, 2 down, tiny mid-terrace property. It's ridiculous. And we have this situation. And why? Well, I'm going to show you a couple of graphs, and I think this is why. Ever since 1995, when Tony Blair came into power, he passed a law and basically opened the borders. Immigration shot up massively. This has had an effect. So the first thing I want to show you is this. So this is a report from a group called Social Housing. Now the government policy has been to build 300,000 homes a year, which is a number that they've plucked. But they haven't actually plucked it from nowhere. We'll see where they've plucked it from. Now they say that in order to reduce the requirements, to ease the pressures on the housing market, we need to build 300,000 houses a year. And this is from March this year. And it says, chief executives from the social housing and construction sectors have poured cold water on the idea that the government's target to build 300,000 homes a year would be hit. And it can't be. We haven't got enough contractors. We haven't got enough bricklayers, plasterers. The land isn't there. We can't do it. 300,000, there's not enough traders to do it. But according to government data, an estimated 183,450 new built dwellings were completed in the year to June 21. It was an increase of 26%, but it's a little over half of what's required. So why 300,000 a year? And why has it been that for quite some time? Well, we're going to have a look at another chart, really. And this one from the Migration Policy Institute. So this chart shows the total immigration, which is the light blue line at the top, the total emigration, the purpley line lower down, and then the net figure between the two, which is the bars, the green bars going across. Now this doesn't go back to 1995, but it goes back to 2000, which is 5 years after Tony Blair's policy. And as you see from here in 2000, it was a little over 200,000 a year. 200,000 a year, say 240,000 a year, 230,000 a year, 350,000 a year, and then it's around that. So it's looking, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, A big drop in sort of 2008, 2009. That would be the massive worldwide recession. But then steadily onwards and upwards until you're peaking up here at nearly 400,000 in 2016. Definitely an upward curve. This is the net immigration to the UK. Now, the government say they need to build 300,000 homes a year. Why is that then? Well, I'm going to suggest that 300,000 homes a year are needed because of this, the net immigration figure. So failing to meet, any year you fail to meet the 300,000 means there's a housing shortage. So there's a massive housing shortage in this country, and it's caused directly by this graph, by net immigration. So when your rents are going up, when your house prices are going up, remember this graph. Now, of course, I can hear some people objecting straight away to say that correlation is not causation. And they're quite right. I mean, it's a good, sound scientific principle, of which I agree. So if only there was some other way of sort of backing up what I've said with something else. Let's have a look at a different chart. Let's have a look at house prices. That may have an effect. So let's look at that. So here's the UK real house prices since 1975. That is to say, adjusted for today's money, how much would house prices have cost? So if you were living in 1975 but earning the same money as you were earning today, the average house in Britain would have cost you just shy of 100,000, 94,983. And then it fell a little, then rose back up. And in 1979, it was 112,000. Then Thatcher came in and she brought in the right to buy with council houses. So obviously, glut on the market, house prices fell a bit, went back down to the 94,000 that it was at before. Market steadied, everyone had bought, and then they slowly rose. Bing, 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 bing. We had the boom of the late 80s. And then in sort of 88, 89, the massive boom. This was the peak. And they were at just under £160,000. And then massive fall. We had the world recession again in the early 90s, big recession. And of course they fell down. And this is where a lot of people were left with negative equity. And that's it was a bad time. I remember living through that. It was a bad time. But look, in 1995, house prices 104,000, not much different from where they were in 1975. In 1995, at the bottom of that recession fueled a vote for the Labour Party and the awful man, in my opinion, a man who should be at The Hague, Tony Blair, in my opinion, allegedly. Now, Tony Blair came in, and the very first law he passed was to remove the death penalty for treason. It's almost as though he knew what he was going to do. But one of the second things he did, amongst the very first batch of rules, was he opened up the borders, made it far easier for immigration. That was 1995. So what happened since 1995? Well, the house prices went from 104,000 to 110, 118, 123, 137, 145, 165, 199. It's 200,000. It's doubled. It's doubled. It carries on rising. Massive inflation in house prices. 250,000, 269, 270,000 average house price in this country. That gets us to 2008, the world recession again. They drop. They don't drop down to this level. They drop to 223,000. And they do so for a few years as we recover from the recession. Then bang, it starts rising again. Little drift off, but rising again. And I know from experience that this year, in 2022, a property I bought 4 years ago for 160,000 is currently 260,000. That's how much it's risen. In fact, I think the latest figure is 270,000. Massive rise since 1995. Huge rise, which tallies up with opening of the borders, which tallies up with what you've seen in the previous chart of a massive increase of immigration. You bring more people in, there's fewer houses per person, therefore there's a shortage, therefore house prices rise. Simple law of supply and demand. And there you have it. This is why tenants are being forced out of properties. This is why rents are increasing so much. This is why housing is so difficult. It's not that we're not building enough houses. We're building 180 odd thousand houses a year. That's not the problem. The problem is that we haven't controlled our borders. You try moving and going to live in Canada or America or Australia or New Zealand. It's incredibly hard to get in. It's incredibly hard to get on the ladder, get in, to become an immigrant in those countries. In Britain, just turn up. Why have we made it so easy? Why are we one of the easiest countries in the world to just wander into? Every other country has very strict immigration rules. Try getting and becoming a Swiss citizen, hardest one in the world. They have to have local elections to see if you're allowed to become a Swiss citizen. It's that hard. And because of this open doors policy, people are being made homeless, they're suffering, there's no homes available. Those homes that are available are so expensive because the sellers know, if they're selling direct, the sellers can just say, well, we charge what we like, people will pay it. And if you're renting it, say, well, we can put the rent as high as we can. If we put it up at, $1,500 a month, where it used to be $1,000 a month, where we're getting 100 people apply. If we put it up to 1,500, we're only getting 3 people apply, but that's fine. We'll choose one of the 3. We're getting 1,500, and they will get it. Supply and demand. And it's all down to open borders. It's all down to Tony Blair. So when you can't have a home in this country, blame the Labour Party. Anyway, I'm going to finish there. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, and goodbye.